Episode 119 of Hoops Across the Mountain State is underway. A lot of great information we're going to get into momentarily. But if you guys are brand new to this podcast, one, thank you for joining us. But two, just get a little bit to know about me. I'm Taylor Kennedy. I'm the host of this podcast. Again, 119 episodes in. Spoken with a lot of different personalities over the last few weeks. We've spoken with some college basketball personalities, and we're going to continue that trend. We spoke with Lynn Bria a few weeks ago. Then we spoke with Dave Wojcik from Michigan State. Recently played at Williams Central Catholic in the 80s. But now we're going to be joined by John Perry here momentarily. But before we do, you can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7 for all the latest about this podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. Previews are right around the corner. I already got everything lined up for episode 1 of the preview series with MEC coaches. So that will be coming out very, very soon. But again, let's not wait any longer as we are welcoming in a Milton native, a Cabell Midland graduate, an Eastern Tennessee State graduate, played college basketball at East Tennessee State, and is now the associate head coach for the Navy Midshipmen. And please welcome to the program, Mr. John Perry. Coach, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Taylor. Really appreciate you having me.
So, Coach, how's everything been for you? You guys started your season this week. How's everything been going for you all so far?
Yeah, it's great. We're off to a really good start. With the new rule a couple years ago, you can actually start 42 days back from your first game. So we open up at William & Mary this year on November 7th. So we could have actually started last Monday. And here at the Naval Academy, it's a little different than most places. So we had 6-week exams last week. And that's really important for our guys to make sure that they're doing what they need to do academically. So we actually gave them most of the week off, and we had 3 good days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we finished today. So we're actually into our 5th practice of the season. Everything's going great.
When you go through each and every season, what do you really look for early on? I mean, obviously, when you listen to coaches, they'll have the coach talk of they're really excited about the team. They can shoot well, they can pass well. But when you as an associate head coach, I would assume that your philosophy or your mindset is different each and every year. But for this year, what are some of your thoughts leading into practice? What do you try and establish early on?
We focus on 3 things here, and Coach DeChellis, I actually played for at East Tennessee State, and so this will be my 23rd year with him. And ever since 1997, my freshman year at East Tennessee, we've been focusing on 3 things. And that's what we're working on. And that's being the best defensive team in the league. And last year we ranked 7th in the country overall. So we're trying to be in the top 10 again. We want to be the best rebounding team in the league. That's offensively and defensively. And then we want to take care of the basketball. Something in the first 5 practices that's really standing out to me right now is ball security. And that's about making good decisions really quick. And so I think that probably majority of that, those careless turnovers right now is just coming from the competitiveness, playing a little bit too fast right now. But defending, rebounding, taking care of the ball, those are the 3 things that we've got our eyes on.
Okay, so let's start back a few years. We'll talk 21, 22 years ago, and maybe even further than that. But take me back to, you're a guy from Milton, West Virginia. You're a big fan, as we talked before we started. Big fan of the Pumpkin Festival, as we mentioned. We've also talked about the corn maze down there in Milton.
Yeah.
Just walk me through, what was it like for you growing up in such a small community like Milton during that time?
It was wonderful. As a kid and going through middle school and high school in that area, really took it for granted. Wonderful community, great people, people that really bend over backwards to help their neighbors out. And you don't really realize that when you're young. But when I go back home now, and when we were talking before we kind of got on here, went back a couple weeks ago and visited my family and got to see some other people in town. And it's just a really, really special place. And I actually grew up on a farm about 10 miles outside of Milton, closer to Salt Rock. And just being able to kind of bump into some people that, that were kind of influential in my growth and my development is really neat. So it's a really special place.
what about it just really clicked with you? You mentioned how you grew up on a farm, and I'll get to that in a second. But what really made Milton such a cozy, warm place to grow up in for you?
Um, I have to go back to the people. I think at a really young age, I was surrounded by a lot of people that were really kind, were really generous, really looked out for each other, and really kind of displayed and led by example and showed what it meant to work hard. And I think that was something that was instilled in me early as a kid and as a young man. When you do grow up on a farm, there's a lot of things that have to be done. And luckily, I was the youngest of four and didn't have a lot of that on my plate. But I was watching a lot of my brothers and my sisters and my father who worked tirelessly to keep everything going. And then my mother is kind of running the show and running the family and keeping food on the table and all that type of stuff. So, you know, I, I can't say enough about the people of West Virginia, the people of Milton. It's just a really, really wonderful place, and I'm really fortunate to be from there.
Do you ever apply what you learned back on the farm to your coaching philosophy?
Absolutely, daily, daily. When you grow up on a farm, you see a lot of things, and there's different seasons, and the planning, the execution, the preparation that goes into every season, and what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and in the timely fashion, is really important to the execution for the success of the farm. And so, just being around that, and my dad he is the jack of all trades. I mean, he can do anything. It's amazing to me. He can fix a tractor. He can grow tobacco. I can remember being a kid and being there when when we're messing around with cattle and feeding the cattle and delivering calves and so forth and so on. So you get a little bit of everything. And I think a lot of that stuff and a lot of those lessons apply to everyday life. And obviously, being able to be prepared and help our guys, be successful on the floor and off the floor.
Now, I would assume the food that you all ate on the farm was probably the best food you've ever had in your life.
My mom is hands down the best cook ever. I'll put her up against anyone.
Even your wife?
Yes, even my wife. And you're trying to get me in trouble right now, but yes, my mother and both my sisters, unbelievable cooks, unbelievable cooks. And that's, I left in 1997, and because I had the opportunity to go to East Tennessee, it's there hasn't been a lot of times where I'm just able to come back frequently and stuff. And that's one of the things that you miss the most, or I miss the most, is just being able to have a meal on Sunday after church, or where everybody comes and gets together, and you sit around, or even in the every evening my mom was cooking dinner. And it's just those were really good times.
Okay, let me ask you this then. What was the best thing that your mom made?
Baked steak and gravy. I'll put it
Ooh,
up against anybody's. My wife Stacy, she can't believe it. She's from Pennsylvania, and they don't know what baked steak and gravy is up there, but that's okay. But baked steak and gravy and pinto beans and cornbread's pretty good. It's a close second.
interesting. Interesting. I like that. All right, well, good deal. Seems like Thanksgivings are a very popular holiday for the Perry family.
Yeah, we like to eat, that's for sure.
Okay, well, good deal. So before we talked, you really walked me through you walked me through your high school basketball career because you started at Milton High School your freshman year, then that consolidated into what is now known as Cabell Midland. Then one of your later seasons with the Knights, you all made the state tournament. And as whenever one of the first things that you said to me was my background for people that are watching, it's a Civic Center floor, very retro Civic Center floor. But what are some of your fondest memories of playing high school basketball here in West Virginia?
Oh man, a lot. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, having that opportunity to play at Milton for 1 year was great. I mean, I wasn't on the varsity team. I played freshman basketball. But for those people that know the old Milton High School, the old gymnasium that my father actually played in, I got to play in there, so that was really cool for me. I believe it was his senior year, is when they lost in the state AA championship game in Charleston. And so kind of to follow in his footsteps, I had an older brother that played basketball there. So that was cool. And and then to be able to consolidate and go to Cabell Midland, and at that time, I don't know if it still is. At that time, we were the largest school in the state, and grew up playing against a lot of those guys that were now my teammates, and and that was a unique opportunity, um, to learn to establish friendships whenever you grew up kind of playing against all those guys from Barbersville. And so met a lot of great people, and had a lot of cool opportunities, and then our senior year we were able to make it to the state tournament. We beat I think we beat Huntington High in the sectional, and then we beat Hurricane High School, which was another good friend of mine. Jed Chittum was on the Hurricane team, and so to be able to beat him was kind of bittersweet. But then we had the opportunity to go to state tournament, and we actually lost to Wheeling Park, which had Rafael Cruz and Michael Jebbia and some of those guys. And Michael and I are still really good friends, and he never lets me forget that. We had those guys beat, man. We were up 12, I think, with maybe 6 minutes to go, and they woke up. They woke up.
Yeah, Jebby, Jebby and I are good friends, and he'll walk me through some of the times that he had over in the Palace playing, and now as a coach is just so unique. And you know this, just playing the game that you love, and now ultimately coaching in the game that you love as well. And sometimes, like for example, Michael being able to play there, but then coach there,
Mhm.
that's just something you don't see anymore. I don't feel like, and you can definitely attest to that. But um, I just think it's so unique, and he's a great. What I will say this: you put him up there with any other personality in the state, he's right up there. One of the best ones.
He's a phenomenal person, and those guys that get to play for him are really, really lucky, because he's such a great person, and he's also a really good basketball coach.
Unbelievable. What great mind. Just we'll just leave it at that. Great mind.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's take it from this angle. So we're talking along the lines of your playing time at Cabell Midland following the consolidation from Milton. When you look at what class AAA basketball was during the 90s, you hear so many different perspectives, opinions, just different insights about what class AAA basketball was during that time period. But for you, being a guy that was able to play that through in the mid 90s, what was that like for you?
Well, when you're that age, I mean, it's awesome. And you're thinking, all right, this is the highest level in the state. And West Virginia basketball, there's a really rich tradition. Wonderful coaches have come from the state, great players have come out of the state. And for me personally, I was just trying to keep my head above water and, go up against the guys that we had the opportunity to go up against. It was I mean, it was challenging. Huntington High was really good, and Parkersburg had a really good team, and we obviously lost to Wheeling Park. We went to Beckley and lost to those guys. They were good at the time. It was fun. But you don't really understand. There's a whole nother world outside of the state when you're that age. It's kind of weird. When I was before my senior year was the first time I ever played AAU basketball. And it was actually just got picked up on a team for two tournaments. Um, and there was no AAU basketball, right? So, I mean, how we got better was playing during the summer and pick up, or I can remember going to different high schools down to Logan, or we would go down to Vincent before it was shut down, and we would play against different schools, and we would just kind of travel around and commute. Not to say that AAU basketball there's anything wrong with it. There just wasn't opportunities like that. So I think there was a lot of tradition and a lot of cool rivalries, especially now. There's a lot of schools that are consolidating, and unfortunately, it kind of takes from those rivalries of towns versus towns and things like that. But But it was a wonderful experience for me.
Okay, so when you look back at some of the players that you went up against, you mentioned Rafael Davis and Michael Jebbia from Wheeling Park, but walk me through this. Who were some guys that always gave you a difficult time on the court?
Um, Michael Hornbuckle was playing at Huntington High. Um, there was a guy by the name of Will Hargis that was at Huntington High, a little point guard, and really quick. He was a pain. He was a pain to play against. Obviously, Rafael Cruz was really good. Jebbia was really good at Wheeling Park. Danny Blankenship was on that team at Wheeling Park. He was a really good player. I think he went on to play at Bucknell. Um, Shoot, I'm trying to think. Andy Huckabee was at Huntington High too, and he was a problem for us. His dad was Coach Rick Huckabee, coached at Marshall for a long time in the mid to early '80s. So Huck was a challenge too. Man, I don't know. I'm aging myself. It's been a while since I started thinking about those guys, Taylor.
Okay, so let's see what your memory can give us with this then. So you kept mentioning Huntington High and all the great players that they had, and people know that rivalry today as one of the more entertaining, one of the more physical rivalries in regards to class quades. Now that we have four classes compared to three when you played, but when you look at that rivalry, whenever it first started, whenever Cabell Midland was starting to become a high school following the consolidation of Milton, what what made those rivalry games so unique? I mean, we know now of what it is, but back then, whenever it was first, starting to gel up between Cabell Midland and Huntington, what was that like?
Yeah, as a kid, I grew up and it was Milton versus Barbersville. It was Huntington East versus Huntington High. It was Vincent versus my brother played at Vincent in for 2 years and they won the state championship in '86. Hart was it Hart High School or Hart's High School?
Hearts.
Hearts, yeah. So that was like their big rival. Then there was Cerrito Canova, CK. It's just I think the consolidation is good, but again, it takes away from the small communities, right? And I think there was a lot of pride. Like I can remember back when I was a little kid and going watching my brother and so forth. Like everybody had on their town was their team, right? I mean, we were the Milton Greyhounds, and all the gear you saw said Milton on it. Like, yeah, that was your town, that was your team. Barbersville Pirates, you saw Barbersville. It was they were red, we were blue, and so forth and so on. The Highlanders and so forth, and the Huntington High Pony Express. Um, by the way, there was a guy named Dante Wade that played at Huntington High. At the time, he was the most athletic guy I'd ever seen, other than Randy Moss and Jason Williams. Now, those guys were pretty good too. Don't get me wrong, but they were a couple years ahead of me. Um, but Dante Wade was a problem in high school. But going back to yeah, I think it's just those small towns, right? And there was a lot of pride in that, and everybody wore their colors and cheered on their team. And then when you consolidate, it's a little different, and it takes a little bit of time, especially for the older people who have grown up Milton and Barbersville. And sometimes us kids got kind of thrown in that mix. But I thought that the administration at the school at Midland, that leadership did a great job. Those coaches that were hired in those positions did an unbelievable job because those weren't easy positions to be put in that first round, right? Because it was Barbersville, it was Milton, and then now you're Cabell Midland all of a sudden. And so working with all those different personalities and those different opinions, I'm sure was really challenging. But I never felt that really once school started, once we put on the what is it, Scarlet and Silver. I mean, we were the Knights. We were the Knights. First couple football practices though, that was a little different that year. That first year, that was a little different.
So you guys were able to play in arguably one of the greatest state tournament venues, I should say, in the state of West Virginia,
Mhm.
and the event as well as very widely known as a spectacle for a lot of people. I mean, you have people that go to the state tournament religiously year in and year out. Whenever you first ran onto that court playing for Cabell Midland, and I can definitely attest to this as well because the same thing happened for me. But did everything not just hit you at one time? Like you're just like, what in the world is going on? I thought we were playing basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, you feel like, you I didn't know it at the time what Times Square felt like, but yeah, it feels a little like Times Square. I mean, things are going on and, there's contests and there's music and there's people walking around and I'd been in arenas like that, but never been playing on the court with, with all those people watching and stuff. So it was definitely, it was a really cool feeling, one that I never will forget, and you're right. I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of different state tournaments all across this country, and the West Virginia State Tournament is right up there, top 5 definitely.
That's a lot of credit to the WVSSAC for what they do. I mean, it's just
Phenomenal
unbelievable.
job.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's talk. I want to spend the bulk of this show about coaching because I've spoken with a few other coaches at the collegiate level, like I mentioned, Len Bria and Doug Wojcik as well. But I really want to spend some time with you on a variety of different things in regards to coaching. So let's start here. When you look back at how a guy from Milton that grew up on a farm, loved basketball growing up, how did coaching really come onto the scene for you? And you really understood that this is something that I really want to pursue until I can't anymore.
So when I was a kid, my dad played at Marshall, and then he got involved in the student athlete program there, when Coach Huckabee was coaching, and so I can remember in the evenings going to study hall and sitting around and doing my homework beside Jeff Battle or Robert Epps or you name it, Skip Henderson, guys from the late '80s that were big time basketball players, right? Jeff Battle is my all time favorite basketball player, and he's been a wonderful mentor to me through this whole process and through the coaching profession. He's actually at Providence now, um, and so as a young kid, I had kind of a behind the scenes look, at these larger than life student athletes and these college basketball players. I can remember sitting on the back when they used to have ball boys still in the Henderson Center, sitting on the back of the baskets and going out there and wiping up sweat. When Bruce Morris hit his longest shot ever recorded in a game, I was sitting right there, and watched him heave that thing in the Henderson Center. And I know I'm talking Marshall basketball, and you're a WVU fan, um, um, but 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 those memories, right? And traveling down to Asheville, North Carolina, and watch a Southern Conference tournament, and being able to kind of go in the locker room after games and so forth and so on. I think at an early age, being able to be on that team in some aspect and be in those huddles and listen to what was going on. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was kind of putting a desire in my heart, that this was what I'm meant to do. And this is what I really love doing. And then you fast forward to college and, I had the opportunity to go down and I walked on at East Tennessee and was trying to earn a scholarship down there and got a great education and had a couple ACL injuries. And thank goodness Coach DeChellis is the guy he is and saved a guy like me from going back to West Virginia, and who knows what would have happened. Said, hey, even through these injuries, you need to stick it out, and I think you can be a really good coach. And why don't you help us out as a student assistant while you're working yourself back through your rehabs? And so I listened to him, which was really important. And he gave me a lot of opportunities as a young guy that was kind of struggling through some stuff, having to rehab two ACLs, and I learned a lot during that, being injured and being hurt. And you can still impact the team and you can still impact winning, even if you're not out on the floor. And I think for me at that point was when I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like, I know right now that I want to try to coach college basketball. Um, and was really fortunate to have really good people in my life that believed in me, kept encouraging me, and really took me under their wing and taught me a lot about the game, and not just on the floor, but how you coach guys off the floor too.
You mentioned a word that I find fascinating 'cause you hear this a lot from coaches, especially collegiate coaches, and then furthermore Division 1 coaches, and that's the L word, and that's listening. When you look back at when you first started getting into coaching, how much of it for you was listening compared to the actual grind of the work? What if you could like detail that if you could, just between the listening and the grind of the work, how did that really get either not really separated, but more so go hand in hand?
It's a great question. Um, I think we all need to continue to be lifelong learners, and you can't learn if you're not listening. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to listen twice as much as we talk. And we tell our guys that all the time. Um, and it's just really important, and being a good listener is not something we're all born with. I mean, it's something that as we get older and we mature, I think we can really develop and become good listeners. But it's reading people. It's not just listening to what they're saying. It's reading their listening, hearing their tone. It's reading their body language. Um, you know, and you learn that way. And for me, when I first got into the profession, I thought I knew a lot about basketball. Had no clue. Had no clue. And one of the best things for me was was being a video guy and breaking down film for the first 4 or 5 years of my coaching career. And all I did was just watch game after game after game and break stuff down, and through that film breakdown, that analysis, you start to learn about not watching the ball and not just seeing 2 guys, but seeing 10 guys on the floor and seeing the whole action and being able to visually see that as it goes, as the game is playing. There's a skill to that, like there's an art to that, and that takes a lot of time. It's easy when you're watching film, and back then it was on VHSs, so we were fast forwarding and rewinding and splicing stuff, and now we've got all this cool technology and stuff. So and you can stop it and you can start it, but the game is played. You can't stop and start the game. So as a coach, you've got to be able to see all that, right? And it all started with me, as you said before, and made a great point. It's listening to those people that are around you and asking the right questions, being curious, and not just thinking you know it all. You got to sacrifice. If you're going to get into this profession or any profession, you got to sacrifice a lot. You got to serve those above you, and you've got to help them along, because if you don't help them, they're not going to help you. I think that's really, really important.
So you've been in this profession now for 20 plus years, whether that be at Navy or East Tennessee State, just wherever you might have coached in general. When you look back at a young you and you look at to where you are now, what advice would you give a younger version of yourself that you might not have known then that could have really helped you early on in your coaching career?
Whew, that's another great question. Um,
Don't flatter me.
and no, it is. I mean, you know, I think one of those things that I just talked about was sacrificing for other people. I think it's really, really important. Um, you know, Sacrificing and not being too big to do any job is really important. Whether it's sweeping the floor or putting or washing the jerseys or pulling the balls out or whatever. I think that's really, really important, especially if you want to get into this profession, because I don't know. Leadership to me is meeting the needs of those that I serve on a daily basis. And that's what you do as a coach, I think, is you're serving. We're serving the players. We're serving the other I'm serving the other coaches on staff. I'm trying to be the best that I can be on a daily basis for each and every one of those people. So I think when you first get into this, if I could tell myself something, I definitely need to sacrifice more whenever I was younger. And that's okay. And that's, there's some humility in that. You got to check your ego at the door. And it's not about me. When I first got into this thing, I'm chasing success. I'm trying to like climb this ladder. How fast can I, everybody asks you, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be a Division I head coach. Well, sure. There's a lot of people that want to be a Division I head coach, but are you capable? Have you earned it? Have you earned the right to be a Division I head coach? And you got to pay your dues. And, along with sacrificing, I think we already talked about it. You got to be a great listener, because you're not really going to learn anything if you don't listen to people. And you ask the right type of questions. And then, you've got to help those people that you're working for be successful. How can you do that? Any way possible. You've got to be able to help those people that you're working for be successful, because those relationships that you're building and establishing on a daily basis, those relationships are going to help you get your next job. Now, for me, I don't know. I've been really, really fortunate. Coach DeChellis has been a wonderful mentor to me. He's like a second father to me. Really, really high character guy, treats people the right way, has treated me the right way, has always looked out for my family, which is really important to me. And just a really high character guy, really great communicator, and a really great coach. I think he's done. And so for me, this will be my 23rd year with him. Let me see, 21st year with him, either playing or working with him. So it's been a little bit different. But because of that relationship, I have met so many other people within the profession. And because of those connections that he's made for me, I've learned so much about the game and the profession. So I would say sacrifice, listening, and then obviously, helping those people that you're working for, helping them be successful, and building those relationships, because those are the ones that are going to help you get your next job.
You mentioned sacrificing, and that can happen, and that takes on many different hats, or wears different hats, takes on many different forms as well. But when you look at a coach that not needs, but a coach needing to sacrifice different things to be successful, is that something that you are taught, or is that something that you go through by yourself, more of like a trial and error kind of thing?
Um, well, I think it's a mindset a little bit. As far as, again, you, you can't be too big that you're not capable of sweeping the floor or doing the laundry or something like that. I mean, sacrificing, I think, is part of it. It it's I think it's just really, really important. It's putting the needs of the team above yourself constantly. Teams are interdependent, and they're depending upon each other, and no one person is more important than the other person. And the teams that I've been a part of, the ones that have been the most successful, we've had the most sacrifice. And it doesn't matter who scores or whose name is in the paper or so forth and so on. It's about, at the end of the day, there's two, there's two scores, and Navy has more points than whoever else. And that's what we care about. And so, sacrificing in all we do, I think, is really, really important.
When you look at what you've been able to accomplish, you mentioned this is your 21st year working alongside the current head coach at Navy. What does it take for a coach to stick with not only a program for as long a period of time as you have, but also stick with the same coach? 'Cause you see that sometimes in college football, whenever somebody gets fired, you see the staff either going with them or going separate directions. But in your situation, I find it very unique. 20 plus years with the head coach at Navy, and I would assume, yes, obviously you probably had some doubts, some second thoughts as well along the way. But at the same time, sticking it out 20 plus years is definitely something to keep your head above water for. But when you look at that, what do you accredit your longevity with a single person and a single coach? What would you attribute that to?
I think it's about doing the right thing. And that's probably goes back to trust. Um, I think Coach DeChellis and I have established a good relationship, a really good relationship, and a solid relationship over the years. There's no doubt in my mind that I trust him, because I know that he has a strong, sound character, and he's very competent in what he's doing. And for me, seeing that modeled on a daily basis over and over and over, has been really impressionable on me, and it's something that I've wanted to try to emulate. Because I think the best leadership is leading by example, and just watching him over the years, how he treats other people, the self-discipline that he has, the work ethic that he displays on a daily basis, the type of father that he is, the type of husband that he is, all those things have been really impactful for me, and I've wanted to help him rebuild programs, and we've been really successful doing that, and that's been really fun.
You mentioned another word that I love asking and love talking with people about, and that's the R word, relationship, and relationships, I should say. When you look at your job, you obviously encounter and discuss and just get to know different people from different locations nationwide or even worldwide for that matter. As a coach, how vital is the relationship side of things for you as a coach?
Um, well, outside the program, whether that be other coaches in the profession or high school coaches, AAU coaches, athletic administrators, right? That's really important as far as your professional development. Um, Inside the program, the relationships the relationships are the coolest thing. It's the most exciting thing for me. It's why I love going to work every day. Um, because I'm a little spoiled, because here at the Naval Academy, I think I get to work with the best guys in the country, because they are selfless servant leaders. They are sacrificing already, for our country. And it's really, really cool thing to be a part of. And those relationships that I get to be a part of, it's just a small part. But I get to be a part of those relationships, and try to be there for those guys, and whatever they need, and help them grow, through their 4 or 5 years that they're with us, is really, really important. And it's the thing that at the end of the day, um, I'm gonna look back on whenever I'm done coaching, and cherish the most is those relationships that you get to build with those guys. It's that trust. There's a lot of trust there. You've sat in a locker room, you know what it's like after practice or after a game or before a game. Um, and the conversations that you have, those are some of the coolest and best conversations I can remember being a part of. Um, and I can pick up the phone and call guys that I played with at East Tennessee, and we instantly go back to it. It almost feels like you're right back in the locker room. Whether you just had a bad practice or a long practice, or you just won at Wofford for the first time, or whatever. You can just remember that type of stuff, and that's what it's about, right? Is just showing that compassion for other people, that connection, that you gain, in those relationships. But it's all those relationships are founded and established on trust. You trust those guys. You trust the person next to you. And I think you trust them because they have really good character, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing the right things. They have a high moral compass. They're making the right decisions on a daily basis.
Shifting our focus now to recruiting, 'cause I love I mentioned this in the last episode with Doug Wojcik, but I love spending time in regards to recruiting, picking the coaches' minds, trying to figure out what they look for, what are some red flags maybe, and just stuff like that. I mean, obviously this is a West Virginia-based podcast. You're a West Virginia guy as well as Doug and as well as Lynn Bria from Stetson. But I want to start here. And I mentioned this with all the different coaches that I talk with because I feel like you get different answers with each of them, and that is recruiting in the state of West Virginia. Now, granted, West Virginia does not have the talent like you see in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Maryland in your situation being in Annapolis, Virginia even. But when you start getting down into the thick of things, you start finding those diamonds in the rough players. So my question to you coaches, when you go on your recruiting trips and you may come back into the state of West Virginia and you may get a guy, you may offer a guy or something like that. What does that mean for you being able to step back foot and being able to step back into the state of West Virginia and recruit some guys within your home state?
Well, I think it's a really cool feeling, because I'm always going to love West Virginia, um, even though I don't live there right now. There's a lot of great memories, and to be able to come back to the state and watch high school games and get to visit with young men or and their families and hear their stories. Um, that goes back to that relationship piece, right? That's a really, really unique opportunity, and something that I love doing is having those type of conversations and establishing those connections. I think there's a lot of really good talent in the state. I think there's a lot of really good talent all over the country too. And you know, if there's one thing that I'm looking for, we have a saying here, we want to recruit and develop character. That's the most important thing to us. Who are you as a person? What do you value? Why do you want to play college basketball? What's your why? What's driving you? And I think that goes back to the character piece too, right? Is because at the end of the day, we've got to count on you, and we've got to rely that you're going to do the right things once you get into our program.
Okay. Excuse me. So let's take it from this side then. Say you approach a kid for the first time, whether it be at a high school event that you've been doing some research on, an AAU event, or just a simple phone call for that matter. What are some things that you immediately look for whenever you first start talking to a recruit?
Great question. You got to be a really. This is where the listening piece comes in. Um, and one of the first things I ask, if I'm calling you up, Taylor, for the first time and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about the Naval Academy. I want to say, hey, tell me your story. And I just kind of let you go. And I want to hear what's important to you. I'm going to know really quickly what's really important to you. If you're talking about your family, if you're talking about the right type of things, I know you're probably going to be a Navy type guy for us. If you're not talking about those things, I'm not so sure that maybe you're that type of guy for us at that time.
So when you hear different recruits, when do you start picking up the authenticity of what they're saying? Because you mentioned how you're listening for different things, but at the same time, they could very easily be reading off a script, or even they know that script and they're just following that. When, as a coach, do you start to realize the authenticity of what they're saying?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, that's hard. I think there's just you try to establish relationships best you can, and over time, you try to learn about people. There's a lot of great opportunities, to meet people face to face, to talk on the phone, try to help them learn about your school, try to learn about their backgrounds, that type of stuff. And so I think through those interactions, you try to be a good listener, and at some point you'll figure out the right answer.
Okay, so you've established a relationship, you're understanding what they're saying, you get the authenticity of what they're saying. Now take it from this angle. At what point do you start understanding their lifestyle? You start understanding who they are as a person. Is that something that you learn early on, or is that something that comes along later on in that relationship?
Good question. I think it's different with everybody that you talk to. You know, some people are more open, some people aren't as open. But you figure out things, and you just talk and you ask questions and you try to do your research, and you don't only just ask questions. I think you listen a lot too. So I think at the end of the day, um, throughout all that, you're going to have a picture that's painted for you, and from there, then you've got to make your final decision, on which way you're going to go.
In regards to the Naval Academy, what has made the Naval Academy so unique to coach at in regards to bringing in recruits, bringing in young men, as you said, making that ultimate sacrifice to serve their country once they finish out their those years of being in school and then ultimately going and ultimately having the potential to go and serve for the United States of America.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really special place. I mean, it's the country's top leadership institution, and so for anyone that is wanting to go to the number one ranked public school in the country and the top leadership institution, it really is going to set you up down the road. So you're going to get a great education. You're going to develop as a person. We're going to focus on honor, courage, and commitment. Those are the values, the core values of the United States Navy. And to have that opportunity to serve in the Navy, which is a really diverse career path. I mean, there's a lot of different types of jobs, right? And then in the Marine Corps, it's just a really, really special opportunity.
What has made your coaching career so unique? It could be you could talk about the relationship side of things, you can talk about the recruiting side of things, but again, I keep mentioning you've been coaching for a number of years now, but what has ultimately led you into sticking within this profession and continuing to, march forward every year that you're in this game?
The people you get to work with on a daily basis, the relationships. I've been doing this long enough now, which is really cool for me. Is guys that I've coached are now husbands and fathers, and to watch and hear their stories and watch their development, and watch all the cool things they're doing, right? Whether it's guys at Penn State or East Tennessee or Quincy University or here at Navy, those relationships are the most valued thing that I have. And then I've got to work for a lot of great people, athletic directors, athletic administrators, and then obviously coaches, guys that I've coached with alongside, or other head coaches. The guy I worked for at Quincy was a phenomenal guy, Marty Bell, and learned a lot from him. And then obviously being with Coach D for so long, that's the unique thing probably of my career is that I've been with him for so long.
Couple more, and I want to go back to recruiting real quick because I forgot to ask this, but going back to the relationship side, you're continuing this relationship with said recruit, and you're getting to know them, you're getting to know their family, you're getting to know who they are as a person. How important is the communication, whether it be during an on-campus visit or a Zoom meeting as we're doing right now, or even just a call on the phone, just chit-chatting for a few minutes? How important is that communication with a recruit?
Yeah, I think it's very important because that's how you establish the relationship and grow the relationship. So, um, it's really, really important. It's a great point that you make.
And then finally, let's do something fun. I know two guys talking basketball. I thought this was already fun. Well, believe me, I've been having fun. I'll say it like that. I've been having fun, but I haven't done this in a while, Coach, and I want to do this with you. And that is word attribution. So, for example, I'll give you 3 words, and you just say just a quick sentence or two about what immediately comes to mind for you. Got it?
Sounds good.
All
We'll
right,
see
here we
what I
go.
can do. I'm a guy from Milton, West Virginia now, so Not we like what's my dad say all the time? We like small words and short sentences.
I like that too. All right, well, let's get it started. So, 3 words, and they're not all gonna be at the same time, but let's start with here. When I say the word West Virginia, what comes to mind?
Mountain Mama,
I like it. I like that a lot. All right, secondly, Pumpkin Festival.
apple butter.
Ooh, okay. I like
Man,
that.
this is the time of the year too. There's nothing better. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's
Oh, you're
nothing
good.
better than going to the West Virginia Pumpkin Festival and seeing that big cauldron and them stirring that stuff and smelling that cinnamon apple butter. Oh man, on a biscuit. Come on now, from Tudor's. Woo!
Oh my goodness. You just stole the third one I was gonna say. Here we go. You ready for
What?
this?
Yep.
When you come into West Virginia, what is your go-to order at Tudor's?
Mary B. Come on, man. I'm a
Man,
Mary. I'm a Mary B guy.
this is why I knew I liked you. Right
And
answer with every
Gino's Pizza. Don't sleep on Gino's Pizza.
Oh,
Mhm.
I like it. I like those answers.
There's two things, actually, there's three things my wife loves about West Virginia. Number one is our farm, number two is Tudor's, and number three is Gino's. And then number four, if you go to number four, that's Snyder's or Berlin barbecue chips.
You got yourself a keeper right there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, well, final question. I said that would be the final thing we talked about, but I lied. I got one more. Have you given your wife a pepperoni roll?
Yeah, she's not a fan. She doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand it.
Oh
No
my
lie.
goodness.
So I met her. We met whenever I was coaching at Penn State, and I think the first time she came down to visit my family was over Christmas, and there was a snowstorm, and I stopped at the Go Mart there in Clarksburg, right off of where there's a Tudor's and it's a Tudor's and a Geno's in that
Yep.
Go Mart right there to get
Mhm.
gas, and I walked out with a bag of pepperoni rolls. And I was eating one, because as soon as you get a bag, you're gonna fire one in your mouth, right?
You eat the whole thing.
Exactly. Why? Yeah, I'm gonna eat them all. And she said, "What are you eating?" And I said, "This is a pepperoni roll. You've never heard of it?" No, I've never heard of it. I said, "Well, here, this is the concept. We just put pepperoni inside of bread, and I guess we bake it and then we eat it." And yeah, so she never tried one, rolled her eyes at it. She's down on pepperoni rolls.
Okay, so hold on. Let me get this straight. She's down on them, but she's never had one before.
Yeah, she's like, "I don't get it. I'm not doing why do you put pepperoni inside of a roll and then you eat it?" I don't know. I couldn't explain. I don't know how to explain it to her. Maybe you can help me.
Well, you explained it perfectly. I mean, the thing about it is, you might as well not tell her that some West Virginians put slaw on a hot dog.
Well, I did take her to Stewart's in Huntington, and we did have a sauce bun, and she couldn't figure that out either.
Oh man, there's just some things about West Virginia that it just puts a smile on your face.
It does. It does. It does. And she still hasn't figured out Geno's pizza breads either. She can't figure that one really out either.
Oh my goodness gracious, we gotta fix this. I mean, we have to fix this.
Yeah. But she's a keeper for sure. She's unbelievable.
Now, does
She's my
she know what a ramp is?
No, she doesn't. And maybe I need to take her on the farm and we need to go ramp hunting.
Well, if that's the case, I need a video of that. I need a video of what a ramp hunt is. I need to see video of an associate head basketball coach at the Division I level doing this. And three, I just got to see what the experience is like.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Oh goodness! But coach, thank you so much for your time. This was a pleasure speaking with you. Learned a lot of great things. I really do appreciate your time. But again, very very insightful, and good luck this season.
Thanks, Taylor. I really appreciate it, man. I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and helping people stay connected throughout the state and you keep doing great things.
Well, thank you, coach. I appreciate that. I do. All right, well, that concludes episode 119 of Hoops Across the Mountain State with our terrific guest, Coach John Perry, associate head coach at Navy. You can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7 for all the latest about this show. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. Next episode, we'll start our preview segments of this show. So we'll be talking with 3 Mountain East Conference coaches, and we'll hit all coaches across the MEC and then we'll dive into other coaches, not only statewide, but also with some West Virginia connections as well. So you won't want to miss what's going on here until pretty much until this podcast is over with. So I'm just saying, just if you haven't already, subscribe, do that, ring the bell, do whatever you need to do. I'm here. Let's do it. And again, thank you guys for listening and stay safe.